Historic site. For those that didn't hear me the first time, we're going to do about a half-hour talk on the firearms that you would have seen here in the 1850s, 1860s. This time period is kind of the transition where it's the end of there's the fur trade and the beginning of the gold rush. So that's kind of that time period. Now you might look around and see this great big wall all the way around everything. This was not a military post. So the firearms here would have been in the hands of people that were just basically no different than all of you, that just would have had something to feed your family as well as protect it if need be. They were also traded. The fort walls are basically the idea of keeping all the customers of the Hudson's Bay Company outside. You would never allow customers, if you were a business owner, you're never going to allow your customers to go into your warehouse because people steal things. So they would be on the outside. All the valuable trade goods would be inside here. This was also where the people that worked here lived. So having said that it's not a military post, one of the people that's shooting, you'll notice he's a little bit more upright and a bit more gentlemanly than the rest of us. He's wearing a different hat. He is part of the British military contingent that was here of the Royal Engineers. Their purpose was to make sure that everybody knew that this was British territories and that if you followed British law to the letter, you were protected by British law to the letter. But, for example, if you broke the law, if you killed somebody, you're going to hang. That's the laws of the time, period. What they also did is that they were also tradesmen. They were also bridge builders, carpenters, surveyors. So many of the towns in British Columbia, like Sapperton, New Westminster, Yale, Quesnel Forks, Quesnel, those town sites have been surveyed in the 1800s by the Royal Engineers, and those roads still stand as testaments today. Now the firearms that we're going to be talking about, they are different from the ones that any of you may have seen, because there's not very many movies made about these, because they're not quite as, they are fun, they're just different. They're called muzzle loaders. This is the muzzle. So to load this, I have to pour everything down this end of the barrel before it loads. This is a flintlock musket. This is the lock piece here. This is the ignition system. This is what makes everything fire. The loading of them, we'll talk about that as well, and you'll be able to see it. When you load something like this, there's two things you're going to see. You'll see these people all using a little paper tube that has a pre-made measure of powder in it. They will be opening that and putting powder down the barrel. That is a military style of loading that Parks Canada has adopted just for ease and safety. When I go out hunting, I carry everything I need on my hip. So this horn is a waterproof container for gunpowder. It holds about 1.5 pounds of gunpowder. The bag, although I'm a little bit of a fashionista, this actually has purpose. This is for all the tools that I need to maintain and fire this. You'll see what they're doing right now. They're going through the process of loading. So, as I said, a muzzle loader. The first thing that has to go down the barrel is the powder. So there would be a small measure of powder go down the barrel. Next, if I was loading this, and so everybody knows there's no bullets going out the guns, it's just smoke and noise.
3, 2, 1, fire!
Nice. That was loud.
3, 2, 1, fire!
And then take your ramrod and you would put that back underneath the gun because you need that to fire and clean it. That gun is not ready to load, you're not ready to fire yet. What you have to do is you have to set the prime on it. So you would pull this is called the hammer, you pull the hammer back to a half cock or a safe position. So for those that have ever heard Grandpa say don't go off all half cocked, it just means you're not all prepared for what's coming up. They introduce a small measure of powder into this piece called the pan. This is a frizzen, which is called high carbon steel. That will be closed over top of the powder. When they're told to, they will pull the hammer to a full cock. It's now ready to fire. When they pull the trigger, the hammer falls forward. That flint strikes the high carbon steel, creates a shower of sparks at the same time that it flips that open. Those sparks hopefully will ignite the powder that's in the pan, and if all goes well, that will ignite the powder in the barrel, and then the gun will go off.
Louis, ready? Level. 3, 2, 1, hold up!
So if you can imagine hunting, you're hunting with me and you spend all day tracking an animal down. You get to a point where you can finally see it and you think, oh, thank goodness, fresh food. You draw a bead on it, clutch, it doesn't go off. That animal's going to hear it and it's going to be gone. What other can happen as well is there can be a flash in the pan, so a puff of powder, and then it goes off. Now if you think as well, not only for hunting, but now all of a sudden if this gentleman and I don't see eye to eye, he thinks he's better looking, more affluent, and more popular with the ladies than I am, but he's completely wrong. So he's going to try to quiet me. I'll take 2 seconds. 2 seconds. So across from the wall over there, say 50 yards away, he draws a bead and says, I'm going to quiet that peacock once and for all. He pulls the trigger. The gun goes clack and nothing. I can get to him before he can reload that gun. So we either settle our differences one way or another, but this can go from that to that really quickly.
Ready? At level. Cock. Full cock. 3, 2, 1, fire.
They're still accurate, but there's a little bit more of an arc on the ball as it travels. So if I was to aim at the window over there on that building, if I was aiming at the cross in the window, I actually need to aim at almost the window sill at the top. That's how much of an arc that's going to have. Now there's also a fallacy in the past that the Hudson's Bay Company, when they traded these to the First Nations, they would make them very long so that they had to stack the furs up as high as the guns. Never happened. They were worth 12 to 14
Ready
beaver
with
skins.
10. 3, 2, 1, fire.
A cap lock system, which means that there's a small steel nipple right here, and on that you put a copper cap that has a pressure-sensitive explosive. How many people had cap guns when you were kids and drove mom crazy? Well, the explosive that's in those paper caps is the same explosive that was in there. So the only difference is you need to purchase those caps. You load them exactly the same, you pull the hammer back, and the cap goes on. When the hammer falls forward, it ignites that which ignites the powder. Now, these two, those gentlemen at the end, this way are screws carved in the barrel from this end all the way down in a twist. What that does is it allows the ball that comes out of here to spin on one axis only instead of just spin on anything. So it makes them more accurate over a longer distance. When I hunt with this one, I can't speak to the other ones. At about 125 yards, I know I can keep the projectile of this in about a 4-inch circle. So that's just with this.
3, 2, 1, fire.
Long time ago, the last shipment of these types of firearms into the interior of BC was 1921. This style of mechanism started around the 1820s, south of the border in the States. British started to make them with the cap locks as well. But by the 1860, 1865, 66, the end of the American Civil War, this was an outdated technology. They didn't make these guns anymore. Why? Because they'd come up with firearms that loaded from this end, that had the brass case, that had the projectile, the powder, and the primer. Those are called breech loaders. So making something like this, when you're making the ones that have got it all in one spot, there was no real point.
Okay, all three together and level. Full cock. Range is clear. In 3, 2, 1, fire. Misfire. 3, 2, 1, fire.
He has a cap lock 1849 Whitfield rifle, and I've seen him routinely put in about the size of a pie plate at 980 yards. That the musket at the far end, that's sighted out to 500 right now, but that's another one that out to 800 yards goes to set. So if you were going against a trained military, you're getting just shy of a kilometer, and you're already in an effective range where you can start getting some stuff damage. The other ones, same thing, about 200, 250 yards if I was just shooting, but if I was going to try and go hunting with this, much out past about 100 yards it wouldn't. So, but shotgun, it's just as effective as anything else. So we do compete with people that do trap and skeet with black powder shotguns. So that's a knife. So if I'm gonna load that, I'm gonna put that over top, and I'm gonna put the ball inside there. Now what I'm gonna just do is take that, put that on the barrel, and cut that off. So that's gonna go. That one. Do you see that little hole right in there? So that, if I want to clear that, I just open that hole up there, or I use the one that's down here. So that just goes like that. Now the powder measures. There's the powder measure. That's the powder. So that's no, it's not a shot shell. That's just a brass tube that you fill with powder, and then that would go down there. Do you know why all of these are? Hang on a second. Do you know why it would be made out of brass? Do you have any idea?
Oh, the firearms.
I know.
So it takes it like that.
Nope. Keep trying.
What does brass do that other metals don't do?
Doesn't rust?
Oh, doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
How about?
Oh, it doesn't scratch.
Or doesn't close spark. Someone says spark. So if I've got this full of gunpowder, and it's a metal one, and I accidentally hit something and it causes a spark, all this gunpowder is going to go off in front of me. So well, I might be made not as good looking as I am.
Okay.
But
You don't want to trade that.
I don't want to trade
He
that.
needs his res.
So yeah, so that's the reason for the brass. No,
What's this?
that is for the priming horn. So there's priming powder. So when we load them, the gunpowder goes down the barrel, and that is powder that looks like.
Ooh.
So that's the gunpowder from there. So you can see it looks like black pepper.
Yeah.
The priming powder that goes in that pan is a little bit finer.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see how fine. That's almost like flour. So what the reason for that is that exposes more surface area, so it catches the spark better. But you want to keep that dry, because if it gets wet, see if I can make spit. If it gets wet, you can see what happens. It just turns to mud. If your powder gets wet and it turns to that, you'll never recover it. You'll never get it back. So you can't shoot the guns, and this is just a big greasy black mess. Yep. Large animal in Canada. This one would do the same thing, but this is a military round.
Yeah, what caliber?
His is 58, mine's 50. I'll take that back. Absolutely.
Was
As soon
all
as you
lead
put
balls,
priming in
yeah.
there,
Yeah, I think everybody went to full metal jackets at the same time, yeah. I don't think anybody, you still see lead slugs in hunting rounds with shotguns, yeah.
and now that's a safety, which means that you pull on that trigger, nothing's going to happen.
If I have a hand on
Put
it,
that fine
you ready?
powder in there,
Yeah.
close that, pull that all the way back to like high carbon steel, so it's actually
watch out the barrel's kind of hot.
those red hot sparks are red hot.
My wife is hooking up with
If that gets
handsome-looking
dull,
men.
Don't worry, we died 150 years ago.
sharpen it, all right, then. Do that is I do what's called a strip.
8 minutes.
So just like that, which is just brass. So what I would do to sharpen
If you
that,
can stand it,
no
I can
different than
stand it,
somebody
sure.
making flint knives or arrowheads. I would just take that and I would just put that along the edge, like so. And just take that and just tap that off. And what that will do is that will break off tiny little flakes of flint on the underside. And then